I'm Janet Abbott. I'm the current president of Bana, and we have many of our board directors here and directors. So welcome to the call. We have a nice full call today. And so we're an association. We were founded in 2010 for the study of mineral water sciences. And this is for rejuvenation of health and the practicing traditional arts of balneology. I'm still admitting people. So for wellness in North America. Today I'm going to just mention our initiatives. And so you understand more of what we do. We have these continental calls every third Wednesday of the month, and our featured topics are different every month, and they deepen the understanding of balneology in North America. And this represents the continuous, study for generations of the modern scientific method that's known internationally as well as here as we're wanting to promote nationally. We do Bana visits to specific sites to learn about their sustainability, to experience their signature mineral waters and study the effective programs and facility designs for use of these waters. We have a traditional use recognition program, which is a process we build a report to educate the owner about their water and what it's good for, and to inform them how to best use the water on site by direction for best practices of therapeutic bathing for deeper understanding. We initiated the first national registry for therapeutic mineral waters to address mineral water bathing, hygiene issues, regulation, and access to mineral water springs that have become more prevalent. And this will apply very much to today's topic. We have a mineral water classification mission to update the North American balneology database and codify North American watershed landscape by collecting source site-specific data from springs around the country. And we have a Kathy Clark Access Award, and this was established in 2021 to acknowledge affordable public access to soaking in hot springs is very needed, and soaking in natural thermal mineral waters are beneficial for health. This is our third year to award a site with that. So you're invited to join Bana and to support these initiatives. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Marcus Copeland today to introduce Jeff and the topic that we'll be discussing today.
Thanks, Janet. So some of you who were early to sign on to the call kind of probably heard a little bit of a preview of what we're going to be discussing today. I'm consciously slowing down my cadence. So Jeff Osborne is one of the principal developers and owners of Jacumba. Is that how we say it, Jeff?
Jacumba with like
Jacumba Hot Springs in Southern California. He's going to explain a little bit. He's going to give us a little bit of the background of how their hot springs resort came to be, and really the town, the revitalization of the town that took place there, and talk us through a little bit about the topic of our call today, which is pool design and kind of some of the issues that we've all run across in dealing with regulatory bodies when it comes to natural mineral water pools in the North American landscape. Now, we've talked in previous calls about, and this is a topic that we know is very central to the conversation about, chlorination of water, treatment of water, how we flow water through pools. But I think many of you who are in the operations and development side of the thermal landscape know that when a local regulatory body is looking at your pool, they are seeing a recreational swimming pool. And what we are really trying to refocus the conversation is to say natural mineral water is not the same thing as municipal water. It has its own therapeutic potential, and the vessels that hold that water are unique and require unique specifications to be able to allow people to really experience the full range of benefits that that water has. And so that's our position, and that's part of the conversation that we hope we can have after Jeff gives his presentation. But Jeff, I want to turn it over to you, and Janet, can we make sure that Jeff has screen sharing, because he's gonna show us some beautiful photos and really give us kind of a bit of a tour as to what's been going on down in his neck of the woods, and what kind of regulatory issues he's come up against and how he successfully navigated those. Now, when Jeff and I first started talking, Janet mentioned our therapeutic registration. So Jeff's group, by joining Bana and submitting their mineral analysis, we were able to register them and officially give them a certificate that they were able to take to the county. And I think that will be part of Jeff's presentation, that shows that their water is actually registered as part of the therapeutic database of North American water. So we encourage all mineral water sites to go through this process. And Jeff, we thank you for being a part of our association, and we're really excited to hear and see what you've been up to. So without any further ado, I hand it over to you to walk us through your story.
Great. Can everybody hear me? My audio is working, right? Just want to make sure. Okay. And you can see my screen, right? Everyone can see the image. Okay. Thank you, Marcus. And honestly, the association, you guys have been very helpful, I think, in this process to establish legitimacy of balneology. I don't think that term is something most people have heard, even that are into hot springs. So to give it some sort of legitimacy and some backing has been, I think, a big help in my kind of fight with regulators to understand the special use of therapeutic soaking. So my hot springs resort is in a small town in the mountains east of San Diego, California. It's called Jacumba Hot Springs, and this town was built in the 1920s around the hot spring exist here. I'm going to try to move through the development of the town relatively quickly, just because I do want to talk mostly about the pools and the regulations around those that we've faced and then overcame. So I'm going to kind of give a quick overview of what we're doing here and then kind of quickly, hopefully move to the pools. So essentially, me and two partners that are designers purchased the majority of this town in the summer of 2020. It was an odd deal where it had been developed by a single developer since the 1920s and owned the majority of it. So it's a population of 500. We don't own the homes, but we own almost all of the commercial property you see here, including the resort and a couple hundred acres that surround it. It's up against the border, the southern borders, and you can see the mountain range in the back where we have a really unique geography, lots of historic volcanic activity, as probably most people have in their area that usually is connected to hot springs. And you can see here, this is our cute little Western kind of style downtown. There we go. This is some of our buildings built from the 1920s. In the background is the Chinese castle. There's some really unique rock homes. A lot of this was hunter cabins like the one I'm in right now from the 1920s. I live in town. And you can see the border there on the left side of the image. That's the Mexican border right there. So we are on the border. There's a small runway way in the background there up against that hill. It's our little downtown. We've kind of just dressed up the buildings for now. It was essentially an abandoned town when we bought it, no businesses. So we're starting with the Hot Springs Resort to bring that back. And then we will be opening up these to vendors to sell. Our rules are going to be they have to live in town and make what they sell. We're really trying to create a really special place that doesn't exist that we believe right now in the whole country. This is our ruin of a bathhouse and some mountain range in the background. This is the original old bathhouse where the hot springs flowed in the 1920s up to the early 1970s when it burned down. We now host concerts in here as a ruin. We do this thing called the candlelight sessions, and we host these 1 to 2 times a month. This is Timber Timbre. We have actually been getting some pretty unique acts, and live music is a big part of what we're doing in the town. These are some of our projects. These are the casitas, we call them. We remodeled these. These were old bungalows from the 1920s. These were everything foundation up. We had to redo, and we put they have their own private hot spring soaking tubs in the back. I can get into tubs. Tubs kind of get a unique exception. You almost get to skirt all the rules if it's a tub, as far as I'm aware at this point. As long as you can call it a bathtub, then they don't really get into it. We'll get into that. And this is also at an offsite property. It's more like a home residential. So also kind of is like Airbnb, where we're not having to deal with typical public swimming pool inspections from the health department. But that is 100% natural hot spring water. Our water, we have enough abundance. We have about 250 gallons a minute that we produce, and we have enough to be flowing through all of our pools 100% naturally without any chemical treatments. I can't speak for every state, but I know California particularly has code regarding mineral springs, and there is a fresh water flow requirement for non-treated water. So to not treat the water, you have to meet the typical turnover time of a filtered pool pump. And so for a typical jacuzzi tub, that's only 30 minutes, a spa pool. In a hot spring pool, which I'll show you here in a minute, that we have up to 6 hours to turn that water over. But these are 20,000 to 25,000 gallon pools. So that still takes, I think around 60 gallons a minute to meet that rate. We'll get more into that. But everything you see here is 100% natural flowing mineral springs. This is a 4-person tub, takes about 30 minutes to fill it. And then it just flows, it just flows. There's little drains at the top that maintain the water level. We have these on electronic valves. You just press a button, the water comes out. This is our mineral spring lake. Our system is unique. I think I haven't seen this anywhere else, where our water flows out of it's actually a well. It will flow naturally without a pump if we turn the pump off, but it's just very little. So we have a pump in there that produces more, and it flows through all of these vessels that I will show you, including the hotel. And then all of that water, after it's been through the pools, then goes into another pit we call a cistern. And then that water is pumped back to this lake here. So this lake is fed by the natural mineral springs after it has gone through our pools. It then goes back into the aquifer and or is used. I mean, we actually maintain this lake biologically and test it. So this is swimming allowed as well. Safe enough for that. We have enough water passing through. I'm sure a lot of the things we do are going to be unique to the amount of flow we get. Not everyone can achieve that flow. And I'm not sure, there's a national code that's been adopted in the last few years that I haven't spent enough time researching if they have the same exception for mineral springs there. I'm just working within California. There's some just more images. We planted all these palm trees. We're trying to create this kind of oasis feel at this mineral spring lake. We eventually plan to build mineral hot spring tubs, more natural style, along that top ridge in the back there. That's kind of our next phase of development of the hot springs. We've had some fun buildings we've done little mini developments with. This is our little gas station. This is actually my office right now in the background. And that's our 80s limo we bought just for fun and kind of lit it up like that. It's like our branding, mineral pools. We're kind of doing a retro kind of branding with our company and what we're offering. There's no TVs in the rooms. The aesthetic of the hotel is extremely natural. We feel like it's hopefully a place you walk into and feel like it's been there for maybe hundreds of years. This is the hotel from the front. We just finished a 3-year renovation of this hotel. It used to be a kind of rundown motel before we did our renovation. This is a suite in the room or in the hotel. We use a lot of natural materials. The walls look like Venetian plaster. Everything is very kind of a natural feel as much as we could. This tub in this room also has a mineral spring line to it, so you can choose fresh or mineral spring. Our mineral spring is sulfuric. It's not extreme, but it does have sulfur. We have cabanas that we built around our mineral spring pools. This is our dining patio in front of the bar. It's actually the bar dining patio. This is our dining room. just a regular restaurant at the hotel. This is one of our bar booths. We have a really dark, interesting bar. It's like a completely different feel from the rest of the property. And these are one of our pools. So my situation is unique, as in I renovated the pools. I did not build these pools from the ground up. And I had a contractor that unfortunately did not even research mineral spring pools. He did not research even that you could or could not have benches in pools. He literally just kind of did it and told us he had the permits handled. So I had to kind of retroactively navigate my situation, where maybe it would have been a little easier to navigate it on the front end. These pools did exist. They did have a bench in them just on the closest edge here, that short edge of the pool. But the main issue I ran into with this pool design right here is the benches. So according to, I believe it's the National Aquatic Code as well, you're not allowed to have what they call them as protrusions in a recreational swimming pool other than stairs. So stairs are allowed, but not benches like this. And so that was what the argument was about. And I found a section in the code where things like wave pools and things like lazy rivers and things like other unique water features, usually at water parks is the most typical place you'll see these. They're able to build these pools without following the recreational pool standards. And how they do that is through something called a special purpose pool. And so a special purpose pool is the fight to be had with a regulator is, will they qualify your vessel as a special purpose pool? And so, I literally got 3 different no's from 3 different people at my county. I got pretty much a hell no at one point, and go kick rocks. You got to rip those out. And I ended up meeting someone, luckily, that was a little higher up in development and city planning. And he came out and saw it, and he said, you just need to go all the way and go over their head. He goes, they're wrong. And they shouldn't be regulating you like this, but at the same time allowing a lazy river. It just doesn't make any sense. So I kept fighting and setting up more meetings involving political parties. I literally had got my local politician. He's like a supervisor, is the structure in California for a county. And we had these high level meetings with the directors of the department. And then they kind of essentially decided they would not make a decision and said, if you can get the state to weigh in on this, then we'll go along with it. And so then I had a meeting with, his name's Eric Trevina. He's the California State Department of Environmental Health. He's one of the directors there. And one day just had a long conversation with him about it. And essentially he agreed that there's no reason why this pool can't get the same consideration as a lazy river or a wave pool. And I think the wave pool was the convincing argument, because I made the argument that, they're saying these pools are dangerous because I have benches in them, and that's a hazard, and they're not comfortable with allowing that hazard regardless of the special purpose. And I said, well, you guys are allowing someone to put a wave in a pool. And I don't know if you've ever been in a wave pool when they're full, but I was a little kid in a wave pool, and I felt like I was almost going to drown one time. There were so many people around me falling over in the waves, almost drowning. And you guys allow that. You don't just allow it, but you permit it currently. I can permit a brand new one, and you just say, hey, put up some signs, and you can put a hazard like that in a pool, but I can't put a bench in mine. It just sounds ridiculous. And he said, you're right. And they should work with you on creating some sort of safety standard that would alleviate their primary concerns. And so he was willing to lean in and call the San Diego County Director of Environmental Health and essentially ask her to be specific. What are your concerns, and how could he mitigate those concerns? And the conclusion of that was many meetings and lots more run around. This is one of the pools here. I also have another one that also has the benches here. And this one's a little easier to see that we have a deep end here, and you can see the marker at the bottom at 6 foot. So their main concern was the 6 foot depth of the pool. and that if somebody was sitting on the bench and they maybe would feel some sort of assumption that it wasn't so deep from there, I honestly didn't really make sense, but I think they had to find something to kind of get me on. And so the agreement we came to was using a spa pool maximum depth. So I have to bring my deep end now up to 4 feet. And they're going to allow, the main thing they allowed, and the most important thing is they actually defined this pool as a special purpose pool. And from there, it's up to you and the regulators to decide what, considerations need to happen for them to feel safe with the pool being operated the way you're proposing. I mean, our pools are 21 and up, for example. So we said, children aren't a concern and things like that. But other than that, everything's pretty much a standard pool. Other than my deepest area against a bench can be 4 feet. So I could have potentially not had my benches run down the deep end there and had that deep end saved. But in some ways, it's better to make it less deep for me too, because I then have more water to use in other places to meet the flow through requirements. So I wasn't against it completely to reduce the depth. So, I mean, these are the two main things. And then I maybe talk a little bit more about freshwater flow through requirements. So we are required to test our water. I believe it's monthly, or it's at least 90 days. I got to look that up again because I just started this path, but and show a clean test without chloroform and other contamination to prove that the water is sanitary, even though it's not being chlorinated. Our waters are uniquely alkaline and uniquely soft. So we have like a pH of over 10, almost 11. And on the hardness scale, we're really low. I think we're like around 200. So our water is really soft to the skin. It's really unique, and it's really good for skin conditions, especially. And obviously, everyone probably knows about the benefits of sulfur for anti-inflammatory, analgesic properties, and others. And we also have a slew of other mineral qualities, but that's kind of the gist of our water. It also comes out at 101. We have a lot of, I believe it's sodium and chloride, but not sodium chloride. And for some reason, there was some chemist that wrote a letter a while back that also said chlorinating our water would not work either. The chlorine, something chemical reaction wise, wouldn't even work. So I've never actually explored that path whatsoever, because obviously we want to be 100% natural mineral springs. But essentially, that's been my path. And I don't know if I was ever able to find another mineral spring pool in California that had been built in the last 20 years that had benches in it. There are some exceptions to this that are older pools. There's one I found at Two Bunch Palms in Palm Desert area, or not Palm Desert, but I can't remember the name of that town, Desert Hot Springs. They have old pools, but I think most of those have been grandfathered at this point. So to get the benches today, this is the only pool I know of in California that's a mineral spring pool that has benches in a swimming pool. And now I'll open it up to any kind of questions.
Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time to walk through all this amazing progress, and we're just so congratulations on what I know just through our conversations that you really fought tooth and nail to get them to see sensibility in regulation. And so, well, one thing I'd like you to just elaborate a little bit on before we kind of open things up a little bit more is the concept of special use. How did you make that case? What were the parameters that you brought to the regulatory bodies to say, no, this is in fact a special use pool?
Well, the California Pool Code defines it. And it says, something like special purpose pools are pools that are designed and constructed for an exclusive purpose, such as, and it names 3, but the word such as is how things like it says, I think medical pools, instructional pools, and diving pools are examples of these. But the such as is how these other types, like I mentioned, are built, like a surf pool, a wave pool, There's a whole list. I mean, any water park you go to essentially is just full of these special purpose pools. And so the code leaves it open, and it leaves it open with the words just that it's constructed for an exclusive purpose. And so our exclusive purpose was a balneotherapy soaking pool. And I argued tooth and nail as well that soaking doesn't just mean you're sitting on a bench. It doesn't just mean you're prone on our shelf there in the back, but also, people hang from flotation devices and let their bodies extend. Soaking comes in many different forms. So the main idea is, though, this is not a pool people are jumping in and doing cannonballs. This is for therapeutic purposes. So that is the special purpose.
Right on. And I think that this is a really important topic that I know many of us on these calls have discussed in a variety of different ways. But I think one of the key things that I want to reemphasize from Jeff's experience is that when dealing with regulators, the concept is that if something were to go, if a regulator gave you a pass on your design and something were to go wrong, and the person directly over them said, well, why did you give them a pass when the code says thus? They are in a bad position. So regulators are constantly looking for, that higher up the chain, am I going to get in trouble with this? So Jeff's strategy of actually going to the state level at which they set that intention and getting that designation from that level satisfies all the regulators underneath him, because they can kind of kick it up the chain and say, well, it's not on me if anything goes on. And you have to understand these people are highly defensive in the way that they build their strategy. So I think amazing that you're able to get that going, Jeff. And I hope that we can all use this as a template and a model for how we can start talking about pool design and the special purpose of showcasing balneotherapy through natural mineral water use and the therapeutic benefits there. So I'd love to open it up and take comments, questions directly for Jeff. But really, we love to have these calls as an open community dialogue. I think, we on these calls in the past, we have discussed the Model Aquatic Health Code and how these things are being talked about at the national level. So I believe there's going to be a lot of interesting discussion points to bring forward. So with that, I would love to open it up. Jeff, you're still sharing your screen if you want to end that. So for what I got,
there we go. There we go.
We're happy to look at your beautiful pool also, but if you want to take it off, that's fine too. No big deal.
I was actually going to pull up the Model Aquatic Pool Code we were talking to see if it has the same freshwater flow designation in there.
Well, lucky for you, we have Jeff Birkby on the call, who is very well versed in this Model Aquatic Health Code, as many others on this call are. Jeff Birkby, I'm curious if you have any comments on Jeff Osborne's process in relationship to a lot of your expertise in diving in and out of this process. Not just Jeff, there's a lot of people on this, but Jeff happens to be on my screen, and I know he can talk really well on this topic.
Sure. Thanks, Marcus. Just for those of you who don't know, I'm a geothermal consultant for the Hot Springs Association. Jessica on the call is the executive director, but it represents the hot springs resorts in the U.S. especially. But one of our major charges is to look at issues related to what issues of common interest to the resort industry. And a lot of it revolves around confusion and cases where we've had clashes with health authorities at the county and state level across the nation related to water quality, chlorination, sanitation. And that's been the focus we've had for the last year in areas too. But there's certainly a lot of interest in pool design issues like Jeff brought up. And I think the association will be getting more and more into that too. I was really interested to hear you, Jeff, talk about your battles with the county health authorities. And we found in our interviews that oftentimes the rubber stops at the county road, that they're the people who enforce the regulations. And oftentimes they have limited background, shall we say, educational background in sanitation issues, especially related to pools, they're often overwhelmed with a variety of other public health issues to deal with, including ensuring that salad bars at fast food restaurants are healthy, tattoo parlors. I mean, just a whole gamut of projects. They're often underfunded and understaffed, and that being up to speed on the latest in water quality issues and design issues for pool is often at the very bottom of their list. In our work on flow through, we've interviewed all the state health authorities in the western states that have hot springs to try to understand why they have certain rules related to flow through, for example, and why they establish certain standards. And to an office, we cannot find any office that can explain rationally why they set certain flow through standards, pH standards, temperature standards, what they were based on. They're almost always based on some rationale that, well, California did this or Nevada did this, so we just adopted it 30 years ago. But there's rarely any evidence-based science behind their current regulations. And you're running into that with the design of the benches, how it's sort of patched together, and whatever the regulations are, it's interesting that the final decision comes down to a county health authority who may have very little background at all. And we've found other cases where resorts have had to fight their way up the chain, like you have, Jeff, to work with the county people who then put their foot down, and you've got to work up through the state level too. So some of the work we're doing at the Hot Springs Association is to do research which will hopefully give us really good science that will be adopted by the Model Aquatic Health Code, for instance, with the CDC and others, to become national standards and for flow-through systems that can be then used at the state level and county level to say, look, this is nationally peer-reviewed science here that our membership can adopt to use in their ongoing quest to try to keep the water pure and unadulterated, but also healthy and safe.
And Jeff Birkby, can you just give us a very high level explanation of what the Model Aquatic Health Code is?
Yeah, it's a voluntary code put out by the CDC, updated every 3 to 5 years. It covers all aspects of pool safety, from design to sanitation. They have lots of subcommittees, lots of areas of review. We started a couple of years ago realizing there's nothing in the Model Aquatic Health Code about hot springs. It's even though, and it's voluntary, but almost in many states they adopt it whole cloth as their de facto standards for their state health pool codes. But it's a voluntary code set up by a large number of reviewers every 5 years, and we've approached them about doing a hot springs section to address some of the unique issues related to hot springs. And the first one we're really looking at is flow through systems, where if you have a certain amount of flow through every day and a certain number of pressure washes and cleaning and drain and fill of the pool, say once a week, we're hoping the research we're doing should show that is sufficient to meet the bacteriological standards necessary for the CDC to adopt those as part of the health code. And if we get that in, and we're assured that the quality of the research we're proposing is going to be at the level that would be adapted to the health code and could then become a national standard for hot springs. But it's again a voluntary code, but it's adopted almost by many states as their de facto code. But it's very important to understand what's in that code and all the, it's a huge document online put out by the Center for Disease Control, CDC.
Thanks, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an interesting conversation, and I'm curious to have others on this call open up with comments or thoughts or questions. These waters get utilized in different variety of ways around the world, and we have a couple of colleagues from the international scene, Professor Antonella Fioraviante, and I believe I saw, Mary Catherine Talot, who's part of the University of Thermalism in Nancy, France, They have their Thermalism Congress coming up in a few weeks as well. And in Europe, again, the understanding, and not just Europe, really almost everywhere else in the world, there is an understanding of thermal water as a distinct therapeutic agent, something that is unique in its quality and distinct from municipal or tap water in its ability to deliver health. And so I think when we have these conversations about what vessels and how those vessels are designed for how we deliver that, this idea of special use is really, really important. And I think some of the things that Jeff Birkby just highlighted about how the lack of education at the regulatory level about what's going on is why everyone on this call needs to become an ambassador for this language, so that this becomes the common parlance, so that we can actually educate our regulators as to how the best practice of balneology and balneotherapy is executed. And once again, I just want to thank Jeff Osborne for the work he did to really open up this conversation and open up this pathway forward. So I'm going to turn my mic off, and I hope somebody else turns their mic on and shares some thoughts or questions.
Hi, Jeff. My name's Kathy Quast, and I'm one of the owners of the Roman Spa Hot Springs in Calistoga, California. And we have been since 1975 in business. We do have benches in our pools, and definitely we've run into this issue also. We're grandfathered in at this time. However, if we want to change our pools, we've received a no every time. They do not want to consider special use pools. We don't have the county on our side. We've gone to the supervisors in our area, and they do not also want to agree to putting out a statement that the geothermal water in Calistoga has a special use and could have therapeutic, soaking properties with benches. So I applaud you, and hopefully some of the things you've done, and if we could go to, move it up even farther, if the time comes, that your work and will help us.
Yeah, I would just recommend because I got a no from my county as well. And that was from the chief, the head of the whole Department of Environmental Health, saying, I'm not doing it.
Right.
And so we had to just, I just, in a call, nothing in writing, it was kind of a delicate situation with supervisor staff on the call to kind of make them feel a little pressure that they're being watched, I guess, was asking them if the state weighed in on it, would they consider it, and just getting that opening. And then meeting with Eric Trevina, who was actually very available and a really reasonable person, even though he is not the regulator. He is like, I am not the person that makes this decision. And so he was just trying to be helpful as, he's more of an advisor to the county, and he kind of gives them their information, but he does not enforce, or he cannot change their decisions. That's definitely not his role. But getting them to commit to listening to the state was all I needed to then kind of open that door. And then once he said, well, in my opinion, I think they should work with you, just like they work with someone that wants to build a wave pool, I think that's a reasonable position, and so that's what they settled on.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. I noticed that some of you have better manners than me, who says just popcorn it out, and we've have some hands raised. So I'm going to respect that. And I have Walker Christensen. Walker, thanks for raising your hand. And Megan, I see your hand up as well, so you'll be next. So Walker, please. Nice to see you. Nice to see your face.
Hey, good to see everybody. I shaved, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, I was just gonna let you know, in the Model Aquatic Health Code, and you may have found this already, but they do allow for underwater benches in pools that are 5 feet or less. So that's new pools. I think the way you approached it is really good, to find this special use exception. But it seems like they're going more towards, if we could have a section in Model Aquatic Health Code that responds to hot springs specifically, that would be awesome. And, it might say something like, benches are allowed in pools that are 5 feet depth or less, or, may be considered to be grandfathered in if they were built before a certain time. So there's definitely some other ways to back you up on that, on the underwater bench issue. And then, so I'm looking at your pool on the screen, and it looks like part of it is less than 5 foot, and then it goes to 6 foot at the deepest. So, there's nothing ever fits perfectly in their standards either. So, I wonder if there's even, this would be a structural question, but if you had to, I know you're through this already, but if there was another existing pool that had this issue, could you raise the floor of the pool to be 5 foot depth? Because I think the bench is valuable. There's 6 foot depth of water is kind of hard for people who can't swim. So the bench could actually save people,
I know.
So it's like, which way do you go? That's if you don't know where that regulation came from. I think probably from people jumping into the pool, but like you said, this is not an area where people are diving and jumping into the pool.
Well, and they deal with that with just a little no diving sign. So why can't we just put a no jumping or something,
Right. But yeah, I think they're getting closer on the Model Aquatic Health Code to addressing more of that. And I don't know if California has adopted that. It doesn't sound like it, but
I did not know about this 5 foot or less that benches were allowed. I wish I would have known that 2 weeks ago because I got into this conversation with them, and essentially they wanted to go to 3 feet. And, then I pointed out that a spa pool in California is allowed to be a maximum of 4. And then that's where they said, okay.
Well, that's on page 46 of the Model Aquatic Health Code 2023 edition.
Okay. I have it. Okay.
And that's another good reason to participate in this group. Just there's tons of resources, with people with different experience. Like,
that's why we love these association-wide calls, is we can really get together and really exemplify what it means to be an association of people. We're all here together in support of each other, and in support of and ultimately in support of the water and bringing the water forward for incorporation into the health and wellness space. So Megan Smith, I promised you the next use of the microphone. So if you'd like to ask your question, Megan, you're on mute currently. Okay. Well, Megan, if you come up with something, feel free to unmute and ask. Let's see, Jessica, I'm going to go with you, and then give it back to. Hi, Megan. We hear you now.
Hey, sorry, I'm having to use an iPhone rather than a computer and don't have a lot of Zoom experience.
We got you. You're on. You did it.
Awesome. Y'all can hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for bearing with me. So I live and work at Brighton Bush Hot Springs in the Cascades in Oregon. And one of my questions that I have, so all of our soaking pools that we have are rock and mortar, very, very natural looking outdoor pools. And our regimen, we just use flow through. We don't chlorinate at all. We just use flow through. And depending on the pools themselves and what's required for the pool, we may pressure wash and clean our pools up to 3 times a day or once a week, depending on what the health department has decided is best in our circumstance. We do find, however, that we have more buildup of algae and thermophilic growth in the summertime. So kind of on our own discretion, that forces us to have to increase those cleanings with pressure washing. And we just stick with natural products like apple cider vinegar and baking soda. But anyone else who is working strictly with flow through, I would be really interested if there are any other thoughts that folks have on managing thermophile growth or algae growth, especially in the hotter months and with any kind of direct sun on the pools.
Megan, it's such a good question. And these calls. Oh, do you mind muting? Because I'm getting a little echo. Sorry. But it's such a good question. And these calls are only an hour long that maybe that could be a special topic that we actually bring to the whole group and spend the whole hour talking about different hygienic methods that people can use and flow through and what's worked and what hasn't worked. Because to really try and approach this topic in 9 minutes, I don't think is going to do it justice. So I not to negate your comment, but I think it actually is just a good segue into let's have a longer and more involved discussion about that exact topic next time. So noting that we are kind of coming up on the hour, I want to give Jessica, I want to give you a chance to speak, and then Chris and J. Paul are on the board. I'd love to give you guys a chance to wrap things up. So Jessica, if you don't mind letting us know what's going on.
Yeah. Thank you guys for this call. And Jeff, thank you for that wonderful information. Your property looks amazing. And this is a question that maybe I could even follow up with you separately as we're running out of time. But I would be really curious to dive a little bit further into what are the other questions and concerns that were brought up with the regulatory bodies, specifically to other ways or questions they might have had for proving therapeutic use. I think that's amazing that you were able to take that water certification from Bana and really leverage that. So that's just a question maybe we could follow up on. I'd love to almost develop a list of things that we could look into for just enhancing that argument for therapeutic use. And even just things like, okay, so here we have this concern about benches, but again, maybe looking at the positive uses for that. Walker, you had mentioned from a swimming ability component. I was thinking of heat regulation, when people are soaking to be able to get in and out and regulate their heat a little bit more. So maybe Jeff, you and I could just follow up with some of those details after this call.
And Jessica, it might be a good opportunity for Bana Hot Springs Association to release a best practices for how this process can go forward, and so that people can actually come together and follow this kind of step-by-step guide. So that I think that would be a great follow-up point from this call.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
I will just say quickly to the group, and I'm happy to talk, Jessica, after this. In specifics, but the word therapeutic pool is actually a special type defined under the Model Aquatic Health Code. So there is I specifically don't use that term because there are some requirements when you classify yourself as a therapeutic pool versus a balneotherapy soaking pool, which is essentially a term that's not written anywhere. So classifying it as my own thing gives it kind of no rules, where I was really careful not to ever say medical pool and not to ever say just therapy pool.
That's really interesting. Okay, that's helpful.
And it's accurate. A balneotherapy pool is its own unique thing that is utilizing natural mineral water and et cetera, et cetera. So fantastic.
Therapy pool, I'll just add to that, Mark. I think it's an important point is therapy pool is traditionally thought of as like physical therapy pool. That's kind of the general sense of it.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you all. Chris, I'm going to give it to you, and then maybe we could have J. Paul wrap things up.
Okay, and I'll be very brief. The Hot Spring Association had a meeting in Montana a few years ago, and there was a speaker, Gene, and Jeff Berkey probably knows this man, but he talked about the long, arduous journey through getting, hands off the hot springs and not being subject to chlorination. And in the process he had to go through politically, which Jeff also mentioned what he had to do to get his California pools done. The one I just want to bring people's attention to that's happening now also is on the discharge. The EPA cited us a few months back and told us to cease and desist having a pool without having the drainage that goes out into a natural creek checked. We argued with them, but the issue is they define soaking in the pool, at least these guys did, that came to inspect us, as processed water, as if we were a factory. And the human body sitting in a bathtub, soaking and draining, might have a few skin cells, but doesn't have factory process. So I argued that we should be considered domestic versus, bathing versus process like a factory. But that argument's still going on. I know of several other hot springs that have had to deal with the EPA. So there's both issues of the water coming into our pool, which they're looking at, we've been discussing today, but also leaving. At times they do that. So we might have to continue this discussion on some other ways into the future. That's it.
Thanks, Chris. And before I pass it to Jay Paul to kind of wrap things up for us, I do want to put a plug in for the Hot Springs Connection Conference that's happening in January. And Jessica, maybe you can give us just a quick detail on that. But these types of conversations, these types of best practices, these are the types of things that are kind of happening on Hyperdrive in those 3 or 4 days that we're all together in person. So it's a great opportunity. If you don't know about it, it's a great opportunity to look at it. And Jessica, maybe you can tell us just a bit about that, and Jay Paul, you could wrap us up after that.
Sure. And thank you, Marcus, for that, which is great having this call and kind of following up into some of our topics, because we will really take that issue of flow through and examine that even further, talking really specific about water management with geothermal water. We just secured some speakers for ADA compliance, and I think that that's something that really relates to kind of all of these types of issues that come up as you're designing, redesigning, anything like that. So we have a great topic and speaker docket. If you just want to go to hotspringsconnection.com, we keep that pretty updated. But yes, so our registration is going to be have a deadline of November 30th. So definitely something to consider.
Thanks, Jessica. Jay Paul, would you mind kind of wrapping up the call for us and
Sure.
kind of
Thank you, Jeff. I think this has kind of been a turning point to be able to see, and it's good that where you're located there and you're doing the real deal. Thank you very, very much. I put in the chat, I've come up with a formula. It's called S5P2B3. And this will help the health department officers help them see what they're looking at, because we're really developing here source site specific special soaking purpose pools for monological bench bathing. So anyways, if that, you can use that as an acronym or whatever, but let's present an image for these and help educate these health officers. And, I can see why they're always on the defensive, but this is so progressive. And I really thank you, Jeff, and I hope to see you in January. Come out there.
Yeah.
It looks lovely.
Thank you. I'd love that. And I would just note that I tried to be careful not to lock myself in to just the bench as part of the special purpose use. Mm-hmm. And keeping it just a balneotherapy soaking pool leaves open things like a deeper end. Because I think the battle should be had to even go deeper than 5 for the reasons mentioned, that it provides more use of the pool for people soaking. I mean, a lot of people, I'm sure you guys are familiar, do these classes where they're soaking in the pools on flotation devices and letting a full body, someone that's maybe over 6 foot, fully be able to extend. You would need to have a deep end, and that's a soaking use. So keeping it open to just soaking and not defining that as only with a bench, I think could help keep that category flexible, so that the designer of the pool gets to kind of pick and choose how they want to design that pool within some sort of safety structure. And it sounds like at least 5 feet is accepted at the Model Aquatic Health Code, which is a pretty big deal right there. So that may be enough for most,
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and the learnings that you've had along the way, and really being so generous with your time and your process. Because I think this is going to be, you've done the work that a lot of other people will now not have to do. So we really appreciate your involvement and your support of the whole industry and this whole group. And thank everybody for joining us.